The release of a new video game console has always been a big deal, but gone are the days of camping outside your local GameStop or Best Buy for a brand new PS2 or Xbox 360. Console releases nowadays are still eventful, but instead of waiting in line at the store, you stay at home constantly refreshing your web browser, desperately trying to secure your purchase online before the resellers and bots can get their hands on them. And then you wake up at 5 a.m. to go to Best Buy to pick up your Xbox Series X, just like I did. I'm a loser. But more important than the console itself on launch day are the launch titles. The games that come out alongside the new console on day one. The game that'll give you your first impressions of the console and will keep you busy until that new game you really wanted comes out later that year. That just means you're stuck playing this until you can get your hands on the real stuff like this. Now we're talking. Jokes aside, launch titles usually aim to showcase the new technical capabilities and features of the consoles, and a lot of the times these games go on to be classics and some of the best in the console's whole library. In today's video, I'll be going over the best launch title of every console from the 7th generation to the modern generation. So we're talking Xbox 360 up to the PS5 nowadays. I'm going to be using Metacritic and combining both Metascore and user score to figure out which was the best launch title for each console. And to start us off, we are taking a look at the Xbox 360. Arguably one of the best consoles to date, the Xbox 360 had a giant library of games at the end of its cycle and launched with a whopping 17 games. Although 5 of them were sports games and 3 of them were racing games, there's something for everyone at launch. With games like AMP3 and Condemned, the 360 had a pretty strong start. However, the best launch title was Call of Duty 2 with a Metascore of 89 and a user score of 8.2. COD 2 brings home the trophy as the best launch title for the Xbox 360. Call of Duty 2 was developed by Infinity Ward with the goal of making it more immersive than the first game. It was showcased at E3 in 2005, where it was also announced to be an Xbox 360 launch title later that year. COD 2 really cemented Call of Duty as a pioneer in the first-person shooter genre, and it also introduced a lot of mechanics that are a staple to Call of Duty even to this day. I personally picked up this game a little later into the Xbox 360's life cycle, when the game was under the Platinum Hits line of games and it was a little cheaper, but it's always a good time every time I play it, and it does happen to stand the test of time. It still looks and plays really good. Now we jump a year later to 2006 with the release of the PlayStation 3. I myself was not able to get a PS3 at launch because it cost an arm and a leg, especially for 2006 standards. Also, I was 8, and my parents would have thought I was crazy if I asked them for a $600 gaming console.
Yeah.
The PS3 launched a whole year after the Xbox 360, and it was under a lot of heat for the giant price tag, but Sony mostly stuck to their guns and did manage to outsell the Xbox 360 when it was all said and done. It did probably help that it had a good variety of launch titles with a total of 15 games at launch, and a few of them being classics themselves like Marvel Ultimate Alliance. However, the best launch title in this lineup has an 86 Metascore and a 7.7 user score and was advertised as the Halo Killer. That's right, we have Resistance Fall of Man. The developers that brought us the hit Spider-Man series on the PlayStation 4 and 5, Insomniac Games, had decided to try their hand in making a new first-person shooter series taking place in a fictional 1950s Europe, where American soldiers fight aliens known as Chimera. Resistance Fall of Man was a hit for PlayStation, not exactly the Halo Killer that it was hyped up to be, but it was definitely a heavy hitter in its own right, spawning multiple sequels and becoming a household name of sorts for gamers in the early 2000s. The gameplay and graphics was truly a showcase of the PS3's technology, and it still looks decent today. Only a few days after the release of the PlayStation 3, Nintendo decided to drop one of the biggest gaming phenomenons to this day, and that is the Nintendo Wii. The Wii was for everyone. Nintendo had 7-year-olds and 70-year-olds competing in bowling on Christmas Day. The Wii hit the market like a truck. I remember my parents tried their best to get my brother and I one of these things for Christmas. We spent all day going store to store looking for one. And then just when all hope was lost, one phone call and one shady under-the-table transaction was made at our local Toys R Us between my parents and a family friend, and my brother and I finally got our hands on that Nintendo Wii, along with a copy of Wii Sports, of course. Wii Sports was packaged along with every Wii console, and it was the ultimate launch title. I mean, it was solely made to showcase the Wii's motion controls, and it was all around good family fun. But on that day, my brother convinced my parents to buy us an extra game with the Wii, so we wouldn't only have one game to play. And that game just so happened to have a 95 Metascore and an 8.8 user score on Metacritic, making it the best launch title on the Nintendo Wii. I am of course talking about The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. The 13th main installment in the Legend of Zelda series, Twilight Princess was a bit of a darker, more serious take on Zelda and was originally set to be a Nintendo GameCube game, but Nintendo decided to delay it a bit so it can be a Wii launch title. The GameCube version did end up releasing a month later. Twilight Princess was a showcase of the Wii's new motion controls, having to swing the Wii remote to use Link's sword and utilizing the Wii's nunchuck remote as Link's bow and arrow. Overall, the game isn't held as highly as some of the other Zelda titles, but personally it's my favorite Zelda game in the franchise and was still very highly reviewed. Well, that does it for the 7th generation of consoles, so we can now jump to 2012 with the release of the Wii U. The Wii U was supposed to be the next step in the evolution of gaming from Nintendo, but being the successor to the Wii was no easy task, and the Wii U ultimately failed, only selling 13 million units worldwide compared to the Wii's 101 units sold. The console just couldn't live up to the expectations and did fall flat in the end. But how about those launch titles for the system? How did they compare to the Wii's launch titles? Well, the Wii U released with 32 games, including a lot of big third-party titles like Assassin's Creed 3 and Batman Arkham City. This was kind of a first for Nintendo. And even though games like Nintendo Land and New Super Mario Bros. Wii were big first-party titles, the best launch game for the Wii U was actually Mass Effect 3. BioWare's third Mass Effect game was a massive hit on all consoles, and the Wii U version was no exception, as it holds an 85 Metascore and a 7.5 user score on Metacritic. Mass Effect 3 was set to be the finale for the series and the biggest one of the three, with BioWare really finding their groove after the last two games and really putting their focus into gameplay and storytelling rather than any major graphical improvement or technical advancements. Honestly, I myself am not a huge Mass Effect fan, but 3 was the first Mass Effect game that I played a couple years ago, and I did love the story and the score. I think it's an amazing game overall, and it does deserve the praise it gets. Well, let's move on to the PlayStation 4. The highly anticipated PlayStation 4 released in 2013, and Sony really hit the mark with this console. Everyone I knew had a PS4. I was the only dummy who had an Xbox One because I'm an Xbox fanboy. Or a moron, I mean, like, same thing. The PS4 corrected everything the PS3 did wrong, with a smaller price tag and more of a focus on gaming rather than overall entertainment. It is the third best selling home console game of all time, selling 117 million units and cementing it as the console of the 8th generation in my opinion. It launched with 23 games, including arguably the best game ever developed in history, Angry Birds Star Wars. But even with that masterpiece in the launch title lineup, the best game was Flower. Developed by That Game Company, this is the first game on our list that was a digital only game at launch. With an 87 Metascore and an 8.2 user score, Flower is a unique game with beautiful music that is interactive to what you do in the game. Every time I play this game, I just plain old feel good. It's a fun game that focuses on feeling good, as weird as that sounds, but it just works, and the uniqueness of it alone makes it a must play for any gamer. You have to experience it to know why it's so good. The version of Flower that came out alongside with the PlayStation 4 was a bit of a re-release, as the game was already released earlier for the PlayStation 3, but it really cemented itself with the PlayStation 4. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play this game till years later because, like I said, I was stuck with the Xbox One for a while. But to be fair, I absolutely loved my Xbox One, even though they made the same mistakes Sony did with the PS3, like releasing it with a price tag of an arm and a leg and not prioritizing the gaming part of the gaming console, instead trying to make it some multimedia unit for the household. Like we get it, you can watch Netflix on it. Yes! Seriously though, the Xbox One was a bit of a weird time for Xbox, at least in the beginning of its life. It eventually sold well enough and had some really good games and exclusives on it. The launch titles were honestly not the best, with 17 games on release and 4 of them being sports games. It wasn't looking very good. Games like Dead Rising 3 failed to meet expectations, and Rise: Son of Rome, a console exclusive, didn't really live up to the hype, making the best launch title on the Xbox One Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. With a Metascore of 83 and a user score of 8.3, Assassin's Creed Black Flag takes the cake, and I'm personally happy with that because even though Ubisoft is a huge dumpster fire right now, Black Flag is a really good game. One of the best Assassin's Creed games out there. It had new pirate ship combat where you can customize your own pirate ship and battle others in the open seas, even boarding their ship and taking their loot. It was so much fun. I had so many hours into sailing the 7 seas alone, not even playing the full game. I just had so much of a blast with it on release. Ubisoft sadly never gave us another pirate experience like that, like Assassin's Creed 4. Instead, we got Skull and Bones.
Look at Bradford too. Isn't that cute? He thinks he's one of the models, Inc.
Get that cat out of the way!
And with that being said, we are now entering the 9th generation of consoles, which is the modern generation of consoles. Honestly, the Nintendo Switch could have fit anywhere in the 8th or 9th generation as it did come out really early, but I fit it into the 9th generation for the sake of this video and just to keep everything kind of balanced with 3 consoles each generation. And speaking of the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo was able to do it again, and as much as I dislike Nintendo for their terrible anti-consumer business practices, I gotta admit they know what they're doing over there, and they seem to always catch lightning in a bottle without ever focusing too much on advancing their own hardware.
It's impossible. Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
The Nintendo Switch became an overnight sensation just like the Wii, and even outsold the Wii. And there was one launch title that absolutely helped do that. This game was an absolute console seller. We are talking about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Our second Zelda game in this video. It is just a goated franchise. This game is reviewed so highly and is considered just one of the best games of all time. It took the Zelda series into an open world survival genre, and it honestly works great for the franchise. I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the game or the sequel. I mean, I give credit where it's due. The game is absolutely beautiful, and it pushed what the Nintendo Switch can do to its limits. The music is beautiful and the story is amazing. I just prefer more of a linear Zelda game, and I really hate the weapon system. The way the weapons get destroyed if you use them too much, it's just really annoying for me personally. But that doesn't mean that it's not a must-play game, and I would recommend it for any gamer. And if you haven't played it already, you are missing out. Just like how I was missing out on a bunch of PlayStation 5 exclusives because I was too busy going to Best Buy at 5 a.m. to pick up my Xbox Series X. Yep, still a loser. In all honesty, this is my favorite console. I do have a PS5 and a Switch, and I find myself almost exclusively playing on my Xbox Series X. Their performance is amazing, and I love the games on it, including them sweet launch titles. The Xbox Series X and S released with a few true launch titles like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but most of the games on launch were Xbox One games that got free Series X upgrades, meaning they were older games given access to higher frame rates and resolution. However, the best launch title on the Xbox Series X, according to Metacritic, is Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition with an 84 Metascore and an 8.4 user score. Capcom delivers with Devil May Cry 5. If you haven't played the DMC series, I highly recommend. And Devil May Cry 5 stands to be the best game in the franchise in my opinion. It takes everything that makes DMC, well, DMC, and pushes it to the max. All at a crisp 120 frames per second and a beautiful 4K. The game looks and plays absolutely amazing. The music is phenomenal and the combo system is addicting. And then also this happens in the game, which automatically makes it a 10 out of 10 in my book. Okay, we are now on our final console for the video. We are looking at the PlayStation 5, released in November 12, 2020. I got mine around January from a friend, and along with it, I got Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, which was an awesome launch title for the PS5. The PS5 only had a handful of launch titles, but probably the strongest handful in a while. I mean, all these games were really good. But the best launch title was Demon's Souls, the From Software classic. Remade for the PlayStation 5 in a crisp 60 frames per second and 4K capability, Demon's Souls holds a 92 Metascore and an 8.2 user score. If you've never played a Souls-like game, this is a good place to start. It is amazing, but get ready to die. And I mean die a lot. That was the last game and console we are looking at today. Let me know in the comments what's your favorite launch title of all time, doesn't matter what console it was from. Thank you for giving me a bit of your time. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the